Well, I can start with introductions. I want to welcome Sean Keegan and Stacy Baird from Stanford. Both you're from, let's see, Sean, you're from the Office of Digital Accessibility, and Stacy, you're from UIT Communications, UCOM, sometimes known as. Thank you so much for joining us today at Stanford WebCamp and giving us a presentation. I'm looking forward to this.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Stacey, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. Should we go, Carol? Are you ready?
Go for it. People are still coming in, but that, you know.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and start. Sean Keegan, Office of Digital Accessibility. I know this is a short session, so we're going to be moving at a fairly brisk pace through this session. So if you do have questions, pop them in the chat. Stacy and I will be monitoring that. And then obviously this slide deck will be available afterwards. And this was being recorded. So what I want to start off with is how do you use a web page? And people use web pages in different ways. And so we've got a graphic on the page. We've got this like web page in the upper left corner. And we've got some different icons. So we've got person who's maybe viewing the page or listening to the page if there's video content. And then they process that information. There's a cognitive component. And then maybe they take action with their hand and do something on that page, engage with it. And all of those pieces act as input and then output. And what's important when we're talking about accessibility is that not everybody engages and interacts with web content in the same way. And so if you're coming at this and designing and developing and authoring content from only one perspective, and making assumptions that, oh, well, someone's obviously going to be able to see this content or obviously they'll be able to hear this content, then we're not building inclusive sites and we will be excluding people from participating. So as we go through this today, we'll be identifying a number of different practices that are really simple, but can have an impact on how people engage. Next slide. And so basically this is, what we want to do is make it possible for everyone, including individuals with disabilities, to engage and participate and have that opportunity to enjoy those same services that are being offered. And so the goal is to create accessible content and build that inclusive environment.
Okay, my turn. So in the short time that we have, we're going to go over 5 accessibility best practices. And those include adding structure with headings, writing descriptive links, describing images using text, using color to convey meaning, and including transcripts for audio and captions for video. So I'm going to jump in on the first one. So talking about adding structure with headings. So we have a screenshot here from the Stanford research site. And in the screenshot, you will see that the top of the page title is actually not in the screenshot. So that's okay. We're going to skip down to the next section, which says Stanford Research for a Better World. So visually, we can see on this page that content is organized. It's based on font size, on color, format, and the positioning of it on the page. And all of those things provide logical structure to the content on the page. And here we get to see a little bit about what's done behind the scenes. So it's not just a visual reference, but you want to provide structure through the semantic markup. So you might hopefully be able to see in a screenshot next to Stanford Research for a Better World, in green, it shows an H2. So that's a formatting for a header. So that's a level 2 header. And if you go down the page, you can see H3. I think there's only H2s and H3s. And if you were building this page out and you had more headers, you might have H4s, H5s, etc. So what this does is it helps people who use assistive technology to understand the relationship of the content to other pieces of content on the page. So we're looking for a logical structure and a sequence. You don't want to skip headings. You don't want to go from like an H1 to an H4 or have random H1s throughout the page sprinkled with H4s and H5s. Sort of like some people in writing might have too many commas. You don't want to have your headers all over the place. So the takeaway there really is to add the structure with headings, making sure when you're designing your content or building your page out that you're thinking about a logical flow for that content. Okay, so second one is writing descriptive hyperlinks. This is actually kind of a favorite hobby of mine. I know that sounds really strange. Maybe Carol will appreciate this. I love trying to write really descriptive, like the most perfect hyperlinks. And I'll have some examples here and I'll show you. But in this screenshot, we're showing that you can see in this menu that these links are not descriptive, right? Things like read more, learn more. There's so many learn mores. Learn more about what? What am I going to learn more about if I click on there? So it can create confusion as to where the link goes and really what's the purpose. And anybody visiting the site that saw that would not know, what you were going to get when you clicked on that. So a better way to do that is to make those descriptive. It makes it easier to find the information and understand the purpose and the destination. So all of these are pretty clear links. Here's some more examples. So within web copy, that's probably where I'm doing the most thinking about what to link, what words to link is really important. Sometimes you will see people highlight and make read more or read about the link. Well, that's again, not very descriptive of what I'm going to get if I click, but if you use the basics of vaccines at the CDC, that tells me what I'm going to get when I click on that link. And you can see the other examples are very similar. Be sure to read about. Again, sometimes you'll see people highlight and link read about, but really what you want to make the link is the Stanford honor code if that's where you're going to send the user off to. If you have like a title of a book or a paper or maybe news headline or event, so the third bullet shows read the following and it's got the name, the headline for that piece. That's the right text to use for that link. And the last one has learn more about color accessibility for evaluating contrast and understanding WCAG2 color requirements. So again, not highlighting the learn more, although that is often what we see on sites. You really want to use the more descriptive text for the links. So the takeaway there is write meaningful hyperlinks. I'm not asking you to spend as much time as I do trying to figure out the best word choice. And spending all the time thinking about words, but spending a little bit of time thinking and reminding yourself not the read more or the learn more or click here, but the actual description of what the person is going to see when they click on the link. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Sean.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. So let's talk about describing images using text. And this is one that we could probably spend a couple of hours on, but we won't because I know it's a full day and there's lots of other sessions to go to. So we'll keep it short and sweet. Next slide. So the first thing that we're seeing here is an image where we've got basically, or actually there's no image, but there's kind of this red text, African penguins in the splash zone exhibit. And on the right-hand side is kind of the article information about meeting the African penguin and about not all penguins live in snow and ice. And so what we're seeing in this red zone up in the top, that's the alt text information. That's basically the alternate text equivalent that would be in place of the image. And that's exactly what someone who's using assistive technology would be able to engage and interact with to understand, there's an image here, and it includes African penguins in the splash zone exhibit. Skip to the next slide, Stacy. So there we go. We see our African penguins in the splash zone exhibit. And so the idea behind alternate text is that it should be accurate, concise, and equivalent. Okay, sounds pretty simple, but that can start to run into a couple of challenging areas. Now, I'm going to punt a little bit. I'm actually going to come back to that in a second. So just be thinking when it comes to alternative text, accurate, concise, and equivalent. Okay. Now, we can also have situations, though, where we've got a button or interactive element that's also using an image. And in these situations, the alt text for that image is passed along to the assistive technology as that accessible label information. Okay. And so here in this screenshot, this is a weather app. On the left-hand side, we've got a plus and a minus. We've got different arrow icons. Across the bottom, we have a past icon with a past button with a play element. We've got a future and then a fast forward. And what's important here is that the alternative text for these elements, for these images, is, once again, accurate, concise, and equivalent. And we have to be careful, though. Some people may give a alt text of that plus symbol and the minus symbol, kind of on the left-hand side of the screen. They may say, oh, it's a plus symbol, or it's a minus symbol. And while that is very accurate, that is what it is, but that's not the function it provides, right? It's not really equivalent. And so it's really important to understand that when you're using images as part of an interactive element, that it is not only accurate, but concise and equivalent in terms of what's that function going to be. If you provide alternate text in which there is not there's no corresponding equivalent between the alternate text and what the button or the element does, well, that's just not nice. And it's certainly not accessible, okay? Let's go ahead to the next one really quick. So as Stacy already popped into the chat message, we could spend a lot more time on this. And so we're gonna kind of punt on describing images using text and giving you all the different variations and permutations and combinations. Amy June did a fantastic session on accessible media. All the excellent details you're going to need for dealing with all the different types of image types are there. And so we could just repeat everything, or we could point to Amy June's session, and we're going to point to Amy June's session because we've only got 20 minutes and she did a great job in an hour. So the takeaway, though, describe images using alternate text. That's the takeaway, okay? Once again, these are just simple things that can be done, and kind of in the accessibility team, as well as in the accessibility community, we kind of sometimes laughed. It's like, what's often the #1 problem? People don't describe their images, and it's actually a very simple thing to do. All right, using color to convey meaning. So I've got a quick test for everyone right now. Let's go to the next slide. I'm sure many of us have seen a map. This is the Google map of the Stanford campus, kind of a top-down look. So what color is the campus zone? Okay, and I'll give you a hint. It's basically some of the zones that are on the outside of Campus Drive, right? So I'm going to give you about 8 more seconds. Take a quick look. Now, what's the color of the campus zone? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so if you said blue, then you would have won, and that'd have been 500 points for Gryffindor. So great, that works fine when you can see the colors and see the information. Next slide. But if I was to ask you that same question again, or change the question and say, okay, great, here's someone who may be red-green colorblind. Where's the academic campus zone? That gets a little bit more difficult now. So on the left-hand side, we can see those different color icons showing you the different campus zones. And now the campus academic zone looks a little bit like the athletic zone and similar to the community zone. So that becomes a little bit of a challenge. Now, here's the hint. Where's the academic campus zone? Well, it's the zone that includes the main quad, the oval, and the bookstore. And so when we're using color alone to try and communicate information, that can be rather challenging, particularly for people who may not be able to see the colors the way others do. And then it can get even more fun. Next slide. Where if you're dealing with something that's in total grayscale, maybe someone who's got more significant color blindness issues. Okay, where's the community zone where you can enter and exit freely? That becomes a real challenge in these situations. So having more references than just color becomes really important. Not to mention, Go to the next one. Sunshine, yay, sunshine. Color contrast becomes really important, and more than just color becomes important when you're dealing with situations where you're out in the sun with your mobile device and can't see anything on the screen. Okay, next slide. Now, it's about using more than just colors to convey information. Color is fantastic. It's an excellent way of communicating information on a screen, but it's about using more than just colors. And in this example, where we have this kind of class locations for Stanford exercise programs, wellness programs, they have Monday through Friday listed, and different activities and different times and different class locations. And class locations have not only a color, but a shape, except for two locations, right? The ACSR Mat Studio and the ACSR Fitness Center, okay? And it seemed like it was probably a great idea to give them the same shape because they're in pretty much the same general vicinity, but they're two different locations, really. And so when you're using color, fantastic, but then if you use the same shape with different colors, we still run into a problem. Like, which one's which if I can't really perceive the color? So they're almost there on this one, pretty close. They can improve it though. Now, we oftentimes see these graphs and examples where people use color to identify the number of people. In this example, they've got total female residents and total male residents, and they've got this chart over the last 50 years showing how the total male and female residents have increased over the various decades. And what's important out of this, though, is that if you have a hard time seeing color, then it's really hard to understand, well, wait a minute, is it the total number of female residents that went up or the total number of male residents that went up compared to the other gender? So this becomes a real challenge. It's like, oh, I can't really tell the difference. So what do? Well, we can use more than just color. And so on the next slide, we have both symbols in addition to color to indicate the total number of female residents and the total number of male residents. So it's a real simple concept, but sometimes it gets misapplied and misused. So the big takeaway from this, use more than just color to convey meaning. Yeah. Keep using color though, just more than just color. All right, final one. Once again, we're just talking about kind of the simple practices that people can implement on their websites. Include transcripts for audio and captions for video. And we had a great little video that we were going to show, but we always know how people trying to share video in a Zoom meeting can really turn out. And so we're going to give you the link to the Jamaican vacation hoax video. But what you can see is that automatic captions do not result in accurate captions. And this is actually a really fun video where these two guys, Rhett and Link, and this is about 10 years old, they did a video where they had a script, they performed the script, and then they ran it through YouTube's auto caption process. And then they took that script and acted out that new script and then ran it again through YouTube's auto caption process. And then, of course, just for fun, they did it a third time. And you can probably imagine the chaos and hijinks that ensued following the third time. It's kind of like the worst game of telephone that you've ever seen, if you ever played that game at summer camp, for instance. So automatic captions do not necessarily equal accurate captions. They have gotten far better in the last decade. And as someone who's been watching and testing and tracking this space for a long time, automatic captions have gotten far, far better than what they were, but they still run into problems. Punctuation, grammar, spelling, proper nouns, those things don't always get converted accurately. And when you're thinking about your message, when we're thinking about the videos that you use on your website, those are a representation and your communication effort out to the public. And we don't want those to be inaccurate. And we don't want them to be misrepresented. So what's the takeaway? Well, always provide an accessible alternative for your audio and your video. That means if you've got a transcript, if you have an audio file, a podcast, at a minimum, you need a transcript. If you've got a video, at a minimum, you need a caption file. And check out the Jamaican vacation hoax video if you want to have about 5.5 minutes of some good old-fashioned fun. Okay, resources. So we have a number of resources that are available. Once again, these will be on the slide. These are pretty easy ones. There's some easy checks for web accessibility, some captioning information, how to write good alt text, a demo of voiceover, reading through a screen, and something that we like to reference is the Teach Access tutorial, which is super fun if you want to get some hands-on experience on, hey, what does it mean to make something accessible? So I would encourage people to take a look at that because it'll give you some just-in-time learning tips and how assistive technologies actually function with the accessibility steps that you take. All right, I think we've got time, Stacy, for the bonus tips. Okay. You want me to take this or do you want to take this?
Oh, go ahead. It's all you.
Okay. All right. Now, our focus on this session was really just what are some simple accessibility best practices. And our focus was really kind of on content authors, right? Add structure with headings, write descriptive links, describe images using text, use color appropriately to convey meaning, include transcripts for audio and captions for video. So we're really focusing on the content author side of this as people are creating materials and creating information. What are some simple practices that they can be thinking of as they're building more accessible and more inclusive content? But there's another quick tip about checking for accessibility. And these are 3 keyboard navigation checks, because what happens is that, people come onto the website and keyboard accessibility is a big part of that. In fact, it's something that when we take a look at web assets and applications, one of the first things we'll take a look at is like, can you at least navigate around the page using the tab key? And so we look at 3 things. 1, as we're pressing the tab key, is there a visible focus indicator? Like, can we see what's going on around the page, or can we track where the focus is going? And if you've ever been on a web page where you're maybe hitting the tab key and you're like, I have no idea where I really am on this page, then obviously that could be a bit of a problem. So, and that's an accessibility issue, as well as a general functionality issue. So 3 keyboard navigation checks. Number 1, is there a visible focus indicator? Okay. Second one, logical tabbing order. So as I'm hitting the tab key, does it follow a predictive pattern? Does it go from left side of the page to the right side of the page and the top to the bottom of the page? Or does it just jump around all the page? And so you're like, wow, where's it going to go next? This is exciting, right? Am I going to win the lottery and get to the link that I really want by just keeping hitting the tab order? And maybe the next one will be my link that I get to. So 3 keyboard navigation checks, the third one being a skip navigation option. So that when you hit the tab key the first time on the page, in the upper left-hand corner, there should be a skip navigation or skip to main content that allows the person to jump from that top left corner of the page to the main content area. Now, these may require a developer or someone else to get involved to manage the focus with CSS, or modify a template to address tabbing order, or even implement a skip navigation option. But there's still 3 simple things that can be done to say, yeah, this page passes these 3 checks, or, oh boy, we need to go back and fix these issues because they will present a barrier or limit someone's ability to access the content. Now, I don't like to pick on people on our campus, but I don't mean to pick on CESTA specifically, but I think they've got a great example of the keyboard test. So if you're using Firefox or Chrome, just make sure you've enabled pressing the tab key. Allows you to navigate on a web page, to go to hyperlinks and other interactive objects. But at the cesta.stanford.edu, they've actually got an embedded Twitter feed. And it's a kind of a great way to test. The page itself is really accessible. And then when you get to that Twitter feed, what happens is that focus goes inside that Twitter feed, and it becomes really hard to get out unless you kind of know what you're doing, because it kind of just keeps going on and on. So it is an example of things to be aware about, and there are solutions to address this. So this is not to say you can't ever use a Twitter feed. No, absolutely. But there are ways to adjust that so that it does support keyboard accessibility in a greater way. All right. We got 4 minutes for questions. Record time, right, Stacy? Oh, and Claire posted in the chat. Yes, join the community of practice accessibility. Thank you, Claire. Fantastic. So there's got to be someone with a question out there.
No one really.
All right, I'll ask a question.
Yay!
We have this problem also at our company with the read more links, right? Because you have like a title of a blog and then you have the description of the blog. You don't want to then repeat the title of the blog because it's too long. So you just have a read more. What's a good alternative to that? Aside from making the whole thing a link, which means the link text is too long.
That's a good question. That does come up a little bit. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. And it kind of depends. So if just the text on the screen is read more, if that's part of the container or the group, maybe it's within a region on the page, it's all kind of contained so that if someone were to set focus to the read more, they'd be able to hear more about what's above or below it, then that's considered to be acceptable. In other words, it's not kind of disambiguated from one another, right? The title of the blog post and the read more information is next to each other such that, and programmatically next to each other such that if I navigated to read more, I could easily read what came before it or after it.
Right.
If they're like on 2 separate regions of the page, then that obviously introduces more problems. There are technical ways, and I've done this a little bit myself, although it does incur a little bit of technical fiddling, is that what we'll do for someone who may be using assistive technology is to programmatically connect the blog title or some content with the read more, so that while read more is the visible link on the page, using ARIA labeled by, you can actually reference ID attributes and concatenate a link. And I've done that at times for situations where we've got like really detailed forms where you have to reference different pieces of information. But at the same time, it's all in one link.
Right. That's at the moment we just have a large block of text where the entire thing is a link, but we're trying to get away from that. But
Right.
again, we have like these, but it sounds like you're saying as long as the text that describes it is like right above it, where they can clearly read, this is what you're reading more of. That's okay. I like the option of doing the ARIA labeled by. So you could do ARIA labeled by equals like the title element.
As long as you're referencing the ID attribute.
Yeah, of the
Yep.
ID. Yeah.
Yep. So you could do exactly. So, and I've done that before and have had very good success. You just have to be careful when people are copying and pasting.
Oh, yes.
Because some people get like, oh, I'll just copy and paste and just replicate this over and over and over again. And so every link then references the first link.
Yeah.
But but yes, we've actually had some really good success with just using the ARIA labeled by attribute and then just referencing ID attributes to concatenate a link title.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And if I can just add something too, recently I saw in a webinar where you can, instead of read more, continue reading. And when you click that link, it takes you to the blog and then you start at the second paragraph so they don't have to reread the first paragraph. But
Excellent
coding wise,
suggestion.
I don't know how to do that.
I can do that part. That's not the problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then my other question was, when you were showing the header, Stacy, you started at H2 on the page. Would H1 just be the title on the top of the page?
Yeah, the screenshot cut it off.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
okay.
there was one on
Okay, I was looking for that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can blame me for that because we were trying to get like some H2s and H3s all in one. And the way that page was designed, they had a big H1 at the top and then like a great big image. And so you had to like scroll down to get to the H2s and H3s. So I was like, I wonder if we can like just fake it. But yes.
Thank you. This is great.
Other questions?
Okay.
Are we over?
Yeah, any
Oh,
more
we're
questions?
over.
We're a little over. Carol had to go, so she handed it over to me, but I think we have to log out.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Check out the new website.
Oh,
The link's in the chat if you haven't grabbed it yet.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.